Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Beyond the Romance, and this is another installment of my weekly recaps of Dramas with Carrie. So last week was the first episode, and I spoke about Vincenzo and some other shows which will be mentioned down below in the description box. And I'm gonna be again talking about Vincenzo because I love the series. And right now we're at episodes. We this week we saw episode 17 and 18, and this coming weekend is gonna be the finale episodes. So at first I was thinking maybe I should wait until it's finished and then do a recap of that for the weekly ones. But I'm like, nah, I just love talking about the show. But because I love talking about it so much, I'm gonna go into Sisyphus the Myth first. So that one wrapped up a couple weeks ago, and I kind of missed the time for when that one was for the finale because as I said before, I get distracted with my dramas because I had started Beyond Evil, which was really, really good. I just love how the plot came together. I might discuss that one in another, either in Beyond the Romance discussion with a guest, or I might do a full episode of that. I'm not sure as yet. But for today, my first show I'm going to talk about is Sisyphus the Myth. And then I'm going to talk about Vincenzo and Law School. And I'm going to be talking a bit more about some Japanese dramas as well as some Taiwanese, and so for the Japanese ones, the first one it will be Colorful Love Genderless Danshi ni Asuri Matasu, which is Colorful Love My Androgynous Boyfriend, and Watashi no Oto wa Rituko no Nemute Iru. So that one is my husband is literally translated to my husband is sleeping in the freezer. And this one is I'm not sure if it's a psychological thriller, a horror, or what, but I just love it. But it's a mind trip, and then I'll be talking about some Taiwanese dramas, Papa and Daddy, Love is Science. And then at the end, I'll just mention, as usual, some dramas that I've been watching throughout the week, those that I don't live tweet, but I've still been enjoying them. But my first show, again, as I mentioned, will be Sisyphus the Myth. So this one is a sci-fi romance action drama, and it's a Korean show, and it stars Cho Sung-woo as Han Tae-sul and Park Shin-ye as Gang So-hee. So they're the two main lead characters, and I really, really enjoyed the show. The finale, in a way, literally up until where it starts to wrap up, I was really into the show, and I still love it. It's a really well done sci-fi, and as I said before, it kind of touches on like other sci-fi shows, and particularly I think The Matrix. I think it references The Matrix really well without being too blatant and too overt about the references, and it does talk about time and how with an event that happens in the future and going back and trying to change the future, and how that can have repercussions. And in my previous recap, I said that for me, the because Sisyphus is a Greek myth about this man Sisyphus who was cursed for eternity to roll this giant stone up a hill. And I said that the plot, with the way how I saw it, was that Hante's soul, he's Sisyphus, and his rock is trying to redo time and trying to stop the nuclear war from breaking out. And before I continue, I should mention that these recaps will be spoiler filled. So if you don't mind spoilers, whether you have seen the show or not, please be aware of that. So the whole point of Sisyphus the Myth is that he built this machine called the Uploader, and what it does is it takes matter, which could be either biological or not, and it literally takes an object or a person from one location into a net. So picture Star Trek. You have the, why am I drawing a blank on the name? But it's the transporter. So what is that? The transporter beam. So the transporter beam, like takes physical matter or inanimate objects, and it basically breaks down objects and people to their atomic molecules and transports them and like rebuilds them again. So the uploader is basically like that. And again, this is again, as I said, reference to other sci-fi shows and films. And so of course we have Star Trek with that, with like the transporter being. And he built this machine. The main antagonist Sigma, Kim played by Kim Chol, I think did a really, really good job with this character. He lived in the future and he also lived in the past. And what had happened was there was this nuclear war that broke out because in South Korea, particularly because these missiles started just like bombarding the city of Seoul and different parts of South Korea, and they didn't know what started the war. But then lo and behold, you find out that Sigma was the person who started the war, all because he hated Han Tae-sul. And he was like, I'm gonna use this man's creation, this uploader, to start the war so that I can use the knowledge that I have of the future and everything that happens in the war, and as a result of the nuclear war, to control the economy. So he basically got criminals, people who were like criminals at the present, and were in prison at that time to or they weren't in prison, but like people he knew to be criminals, and he put them in positions of power, so like the prime minister, people in like cabinet, in like head cabinet positions like Ministry of Finance and transportation, those kind of things. And they built their wealth, and they created this this cabal of corrupt politicians, um who were using their knowledge of what happens in the future to amass their wealth there, and then starts a war to kill all like 2/3 of the South Korean population. And just because. And for Sigma, it's mainly because he hated Han Tae-soo. So because he hated this one person, and also because he felt marginalized by society as a whole, he hated everyone. He's like, oh, these people deserve to die because they didn't like me. But like, no, sir, these people don't even know you. Like, these are children and strangers who are going about their day, trying to live their lives, and you're obliterating them off the face of the earth because you personally felt marginalized by a few people who you interacted with daily, but then you took that and you expanded it, and basically said everyone deserves to die because of that. So then what happens with Council? Hey, she and her father, like, they survived the nuclear blast, and then it turns out the reason they survived the nuclear blast because of a bunker, and then it turns out that Han Tae-soo is the one who built the bunker for them, based on the knowledge that he got from Kang So-hee. And but this is where the plot kind of begins to fall apart to me, because when you're talking about time, as I had said before, when you're trying to change the future, every action that you do starting from point A to change what happens at point Z, every step that you take from point A going forward again changes the result of what point Z will be. So like, okay, so you built the shelter. So then her knowledge of the shelter existing should affect everything that going forward. So it's like we say, like, and then there's in the final episode, what happens, this is where I said that where the plot really begins to stop making any kind of sense, and it's like contradicting itself, and also what we know to be the laws of physics, and then the laws of time travel. Again, it's fiction and they can do whatever they want, but still things still need to make sense. So what happens is, at the end, where they're finally defeating Sigma, it happens because Hante Soul saw the future, and he saw up to a certain point, he started to like do these things where he figured out, okay, if we're gonna beat Sigma, we need to get this bag of ammunition. I need to put I need to get is it Jason? Let me make sure I have his name correct. Oh yeah, I was right. Che Jason, played by Che Jong Hyuk. And so like he got Jason to wear this bulletproof vest, because then she was, because Kang So Hee was being chased by the ex cop who became a mercenary within like 5 minutes. And so like, because he wore this bulletproof vest, he saved her life. So then she went on to be to like decide, I'm gonna go and find Sigma in this church, where he built the uploader under the church. And so okay, so that happens, and then because that happens, he Council here finds a way to like have them become duplicates of themselves. This part is not really explained, but the problem is that now Sohei exists in three. And that makes no sense, because there's young Sohei, who's about 9 years old when the present is happening. Then there's the original Sohei who came back from the future. I remember, you can't exist, like physics says, one person can't exist, like duplicates of the same person can't exist in the same space at the same time. So you can have young Sohei, 9 years old. You have older Sohei from the future who came back. Like, they can exist here and even here, but they can't exist here. And we saw that proven to the scene where future Sohei saw her younger self at the amusement park. And she purposely kept a certain distance because she knew that she can't interact with herself, even as a young version. So we have the two of these. And then Taisel bring find they oh yeah, they get uploaded. So now they come back. So there's two Taisels and three Soheis, which doesn't make sense at all. That does not make sense. You can't have two future Soheis and one present Sohei. That doesn't make sense, because then like these two would be contradicting each other because they're the same age and they're existing in the same time and they came from the same uploader. So that's where to me the plot starts to fall apart. And it stopped making sense because that's when like I like is this device I call because reasons, where writers decide, okay, I want this to happen, so I don't need to give a reason because this is what I want it to be. And I'm like, I can buy into it, but then it just like made it stop making sense. So then at the end, they defeat Sigma, and they do that because the present Sigma, who is the same age of Tasteful, because remember they went to school together, like so his dad, he goes to him and like he basically gets Sigma to see that someone is seeing him, because a part of like for Sigma, a lot of his thing, he feels invisible to society. He feels like society doesn't care. So you have so his dad goes to him and he shows him compassion after he's shot. And even then he was blaming Taisel, because I'm like, no, Taisel didn't shoot you. It was Sohei who shot you, sir. But he's like of that, he's of the mindset that everything that goes wrong in his life is Taisel's fault. Even though it was Taisel that was trying to stop Sohei from shooting him. But so I guess so his father goes to him and he shows him compassion, and he shows him that someone does see you and that someone does care. And this stops him from becoming vengeful against Taeso. And this changes their future, because then like when what we saw was the nuclear bombs and the missiles starting to fall, and then they disappear because that future changed. So the war no longer breaks up because he no longer has hate in his heart for Taeso and for society as a whole. So the uploader doesn't exist because it was the uploader that transported the missiles, and then like other people disappear. So like it's Park Kyung Do played by Song Dong Il, and Jung Ha Jun played by Son Ho, Im Young Ro played by sorry, no, the character is Song Jae played by Im Young Ro, and Bing Bing Isu Woo, who Bing 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 played by Isu. And the four of them, these are the ones, who run like the basement where like random objects dropped by the uploader comes. So they have what they call the downloader. So they stop existing, which makes sense because the future them is no longer like the future changes, so they're no longer from the future. Like it's just the present them now. And again, the plot and the show contradicts itself here, because if they stop existing, everything else associated with them should stop existing too. The downloader should stop existing. The massive uploader that Sigma built should stop existing too. Everything associated with the future should stop existing too. But it does not. That makes no sense, because if Sigma doesn't go on to create everything that the future that created the apocalypse, should stop existing. The massive uploader, the basement, as I said, the basement, the briefcase, everything should stop existing, but it does not. And even his memory, like even if he has memory of what happens in the future, because we saw as a young child he saw the future, certain things that he saw still wouldn't exist because they I'm trying to make sense of this, but it doesn't. But and again, the reason and another thing that doesn't make sense is Hante Soul. So he what he does to stop Sigma is he ultimately commits suicide. Again, this doesn't make sense because we saw him holding the gun to his right temple and the blood came out on the other side, but there's no bullet hole here. So this is like these is sometimes what that bothers me with K dramas is like they're so concerned with the actors always looking pretty on screen that things like bullet wounds or cuts or whatever are made to look super like clean. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. But even then, he shot himself in the head. Why does he not have a bullet hole on the right side of his temple? And we're assuming that he is dead, or maybe even in a coma. But again, that still doesn't make sense because what we see with him at the end is, the show starts off with him on a plane and he's back on the plane and he sees Sohei and he starts to take his pill because he thinks he's freaking out, but then he stops because it's, I guess he's accepting that this is the reality he wants to live in, where it's only him and Sohei. So now you're wondering, is he in heaven? Is this his idea of heaven? Is he dead? Is he in a coma? Is If he's not in a coma, is he like trapped is he trapped somewhere in the in between? We don't know because that is super unclear, and again, these are things that contradict the show. But and then we saw his brother come back, and then it's like, so who was watching his brother all this time? Because his ass should be dead. Because if he was unconscious, he had no one looking after his medical needs. He would have starved to death. He would have been dehydrated. Got up from out of the chair like nothing happened. I'm like, has he not been stuck there for months? Still. But with all of these things that still make no sense, I'm gonna accept that this is what it is. And there's some shows that I like I said before, look at the beginning. That one jumped the shark in episode 9. I think like a little bit of that happens. Not maybe not the shark, but they jumped the dolphin in the final episode of Sisyphus the Myth. But beyond that, it's still really well done. So the VFX are really, really good. The plot, the overall plot is really good. I love the story they're trying to tell about trying to change the future and integrating Greek mythology into the story. And the acting is fantastic. I think Park Shin Ye was really good. I was super happy to see her in another action role because if you've seen Alive, she was really good in that. That one's on Netflix as well, and that's a film, and it stars Chibushik, and they did really good. It's a zombie type of film, and but I was really impressed by Kim Byung Chul and Cho Sung Woo because I think they were like their scenes they played off of each other really well. And also, I was just so happy to see Sung-woo playing in a show where he's smiling because if you've seen Stranger, otherwise known as Secret Forest, his character doesn't smile, and that's because of a medical condition. So, but I was so happy to see him like smiling and being more alive, and more being able to like show his full his full emotions and really tap into a different side of his character than his acting abilities that we've seen for a really long time. And I think Kim Byung Chul was a really good villain. Like Sigma, it was like, sir, you know all this because you hate a man. Like, let this shit go. Like the man is living his life and you're still there. But then again, this happens with us. Like when we have trauma, there's some things are really hard to let go of. So I think that's also another moral of the story with him is that when you suffer a traumatic past, like some people they focus on this one thing and this is the thing that they think they need to get better. This is the one thing that they focus on. So I think that was his I think that's the moral of the story for that. But I'm gonna stop talking about Sisyphus the Myth now, and I'm going to move on to Vincenzo. So Vincenzo, I love this show. It's so funny. I keep saying that, but it really is. It's one of my favorite shows of 2021. It's one of the funniest shows I've seen since I would say the beginning of 2020. Because a lot of the shows that I saw were dramas and thrillers, like Nobody Knows, Tell Me What You Saw. What else? Flower of Evil. Like most of the shows I really really enjoyed last year were thrillers or really deep dramatic. Deep. What's the word I'm looking for? Like super dramatic. And then even for this year, like even the where I found humor in things was more necessary. They weren't intended to be comical, but it's just the situation is absurd. Like if you watch like Penthouse season 1 and season 2, like that show is a melodrama, but it's not, no, it's not a melodrama. It's a makjang, which is, like where the scenario is like outrageous and like everything is just like so much screaming and it just like people that should be dead come back, and then people that we want to live die, and then it's like the villains are just like super evil and it's just like you need to die. Judante, he was like he's woo, that man is just evil. But like the things that made that I found comical about that were just like the situations are just you're just like this is so ridiculous, but it's kind of funny about it. But Vincenzo is just genuinely really good comedy, and I think Song Joong Ki is doing such a good job. I'm so happy to see him in this role, and the cast, the entire supporting cast, everyone is funny. I think who I think who is doing a really good job with the humor is Johan Chul, who plays Han Sung Hyuk, is doing a really good job with the comedy. I think he does really good physical comedy. This is the first time I think I'm seeing him in a role like this, where he uses a lot his body a lot, where it's like he's doing like small ticks and he jumps or like he falls and he's just like, and then like these little quips and the way he has like a really good, I think a really good back and forth with Jang Jung Woo, played by Taeseon. I think he's like he unexpectedly is I think the funniest character in the show. And they even like even if you take in the supporting cast, which is the renters of the mall, I think his comedy is a bit funnier because he's so it's so unexpected, like his scenes, and he also does, I think, a really good job in his scenes with Kwak Dong Yeon, who plays Jang So Hanso, and they work really good together. I would love to see them in a kind of like a buddy cop kind of situation for a drama. I would love for them to be paired up again as like maybe like not bumbling fools, but like like in a comedic cop situation, or even something like Chief Kim, otherwise known as Gun Manager, which was also written. I can't remember if it was written by the same writer of Vincenzo or is it directed by the same PD. I can't remember, but like it's really really funny, and but for Vincenzo, it's beginning to wrap up. But like we saw the aftermath of his mom getting murdered, and we saw like we really saw Vincenzo be like the cool expressionless assassin that we've heard him to be. Now we finally got to see it. And I just think he was really good in this scene. And like, we're really getting to see, for me anyway, a different side of Song Joong Ki as a performer. But then even in like I love how we're getting like small touches of his humanity, like when he was going back to Italy to help the mafioso family back in Italy. Like he was reading a book on like how to befriend a bird, and I'm like, yes, he hasn't forgotten Ingazi, his pigeon. And I'm like, yes, this is to show that he is this pigeon is his friend, and he intends to keep this pigeon around. And I just thought that was hilarious, and I just thought it was a really good a little small tidbit to remind of his humanity. And then like you have the renters who was now they consider themselves family Vincenzo. And I just thought it was so good. And then they got to put on their suits, like they went for, like Vincenzo gave them his card, and they went shopping, and they all came in these sleek black suits. I'm like, yes, and I want to see them. I can't wait to see the final episodes because I would love to see them in those suits again and just like being all badass and like backing him up. Because the thing with Vincenzo is like Myung Hee and Woo, they think that they know he's a badass, but they think he is alone, that no, there's no one to back him up. But then it's like, yeah, no, this man got a whole bunch of people behind him, especially Hong Cha Young. And I just love that he has this family now, and like he lost his mom, which is devastating, but they all like rallied around him and they came back. And then my wish and my hope that I had mentioned in my previous recap, that Han So, like he would kind of take Han So under his wing to be like his little his brother. And I'm like, yes, this is, we're finally getting this. But I'm so afraid that something is gonna happen to Han, so that Jungwoo's gonna find out that he's betrayed him and he's working with Vincenzo, and that he's gonna die. And I'm like, I can almost see a scene where he is dying and he's in Vincenzo's arms and he's like, thank you for being my brother. And I'm like, no, like this is literally a vision I have in my head of what's gonna happen, and I don't want it to be. I want this show to end with Jungwoo either in prison or dead. But this is Taeseon. I don't see him dying. So like he's gonna be in prison, and like they're gonna you have the mall, they have the money, and they're gonna do like an investigative kind of situation where they're gonna go around. They're like people's gonna come to them, or they're gonna go around and solving people's problems. And I just want, if they do a second season, I would love that to be it, so that we can learn not only more about Vincenzo, but more about these the renters. And I just think it's a really good show, really well acted. The comedy to me is on point, and it's a really good mix of action and like drama. It might not be some people's cup of tea, but I love it. And yeah, that's it for Vincenzo. It's a good recommendation. It's like finishing, as I said, 2 episodes. Remember, it's on Netflix, and I really can't wait to see what happens. And I'm so happy to see Song Joong Ki, and like the whole cast is really good. And then my third and final K drama that I'm going to talk about today is Law School. And now we are at this week is the third week. So that was episode 5 and 6 on Netflix. Remember, it shows every Wednesday and Thursday, which is kind of why I'm doing this. I did this after I watched it. Um, so episode 5 and 6 is we're getting more and more of this plot. Now this plot is becoming more entangled. It's kind of like the oh what a tangled web we weave when we first practice to deceive. And this entire show is like I think the motif for it is a puzzle, but it's also a web. So like they have a motif of elephants. I think one should also be a spider web because everything is interconnected, which is a standard in a lot of like not only Korean but Asian dramas as a general, where like all of the characters are kind of like connected in like this spider web, and we're getting that with this show. And we learned that um Kang Sol B, the student like they call their Sol A and Sol B. Like Sol B is the daughter of Vice Dean Kang Juman, and it's just like by the end of this, how much of these kids are gonna relate it to these professors and these school administrators? Like, cause I'm like next episode, which will be episode 7. I'm getting the feeling that we're gonna find out that another student is related to some administrator and are because it seems like one of the students does have a personal grudge against the prosecutor, or I'm not sure if it's the prosecutor or the like one of the I think he's the vice dean, or no, he's not a vice dean, but he's one of the other administrators, and that one is Soji Ho. I think he has a vendetta against one of the school administrators, and we kind of got a bit of that in the preview, but they haven't said anything. But it seems like all these shooters are gonna be interconnected to all these administrators somehow, some way. But we're getting a bit more. We're getting to learn a bit more about the administrators and the students, and we see why Sobi is the way she is. Like her mom is like, the phrase tiger mom. I don't like using that phrase. Because to me I think it's depending on how it's used could be derogatory to Asian mothers. But her mom is extremely competitive. Now I thought that Somin in Penthouse, I thought she was horrible, but nah, this lady tops her. Like she's horrible. Like you threatened to commit suicide in front of your daughter by swallowing pills to get her to do what you want her to do. Like that's a like excuse my language, like that's a mind fuck. And she's doing this to her own daughter to get her daughter to become a judge. She doesn't care what her daughter wants to do. She's pushing her to be a student. And like she's horrible. Like she's terrible. And then we're gonna see it seems one of the other students let me see. Her name is Joni Sol, played by Ko Yoon Jung. She's in an abusive relationship, and I want to see how they're gonna explore it because I think it's very like we do need to see more situations of how like we see like abusive relationships in Asian dramas a lot, but then like sometimes the way how they play out the situation and the scenario to me doesn't always sit well because like there's no real um repercussions for the abuser. Like a lot of them they're just like the women leave, but we don't see what happens to the men. Whereas like they're behind the scene locking up and charging, but then we also don't see the mental consequences like the trauma caused on the victims. So because we're getting bits of this in beginning season in episode 6, I'm hoping for the rest of the season they explore how this affects her mentally and emotionally, and the importance of a support system, namely coming from the teachers and from her friends. And I hope that this guy is punished. Like we do need to see that happening, I think, in Asian dramas more. And then we're getting there's the Kangbyo, who is the sister of Kang Sol A, and like there's this guy who's hanging around, and he is a predator. Like he was introduced because he raped a young girl and he went to prison, but not for very long because the prosecutor was murdered. Like they bought this BS excuse, and that's how he got off. And I'm hoping his ass gets sent back to prison and nothing happens to Kang Bill, because what's gonna happen? It seems that he is also related to Kang Dan, who is and Kang Soleil's it seems older sister, and like apparently like she has his son for this man. And I'm hoping that if what happens, what I'm suspecting is that he raped her and she got pregnant, and he's now trying to claim rights to his child. That is not what happens, but I am suspecting that that's how it is. And then she has a connection to Professor Yang Jun Hoon, which is like the main protagonist of this show, played by Kim Young Min, and like they're all again interconnected. And so I'm looking to see how that plays out. And I'm also hoping we get more of Kim Eun Suk, played by Lee Jong Un, because she's just a really good actress, and I just love her scenes. But I'm really enjoying Law School. Again, this is a Netflix show. It will be in the description box. Like, for what I'll do is for the shows, I'll list the if they're Netflix, Viki, and then there's some from WeTV that I'm watching as well. I'll put those in the description box. And that's it for the Korean shows. Next, I'm going to talk about Colorful Love and Watashi no Oto. So these are two are Japanese shows. So Colorful Love, my boyfriend, my androgynous boyfriend, is a Japanese drama. This one's about six, but the two shows I'm talking about are going to be both like half-hour shows, so they're not long like the Korean dramas. And this one stars Ai Yoshikawa, who plays Wako Machida, and Rehito Itigaki, who plays Meguru Soma. And I just love this one. This one is so cute. So you have Wako, who is she works at a she's an editor. No, she works in, I think it's marketing for a production company. And she meets up with Meguru, who is her high school friend, and he's androgynous, and so he identifies as a man. He's biologically a man, and he identifies his gender as a man. So but he is androgynous in the fact that he looks like a girl, and he has like effeminate behavior, and he wears these really lovely and pretty and brightly colored outfits, and he's adorable. Oh my god, like he's so cute, and he's like smaller than her, and like she's like, I'm 5 feet, so I think he's probably about my size or maybe a bit taller, but he's like small and like cute. And like the whole thing is that he identifies as a man, but he like outwardly people mistake him for a girl, and he's like that doesn't bother him because that's who he is, right? He wears like he like wear dresses with like jeans or whatever, and to me they're regular clothes. But I just love how they're discussing the fact of how of sexuality and gender identity in this show. Like for us, and this happens a lot, I think, for J dramas, where they're a bit more experimental than Chinese or Korean shows. And I would say also Taiwanese shows are like J dramas, where they're more open to discussing like sexual identity and gender identity in their shows. And Colorful Love is like that. And because there's another character called Kira, played by Ren Kiriyama, like he's freaking hilarious. He's talk about dramatic. Oh my gosh, he is so funny. And like for him, like his love interest is a Shahi Tetsumoto, played by Miki Mizuno, and she's older than him. So we have, again, I don't know if there's a Japanese word for it, but we have a Nuna romance, and I'm gonna use Nuna romance to discuss all of these. It's a Korean word represent talking about relationships between an older woman and a younger man, or if like North Americans they say cougar, but I think Nuna because it just sounds better, and I'm gonna use that to refer to the Asian dramas of this of with this particular plot where you have younger men with older women. And there's another one that I'm going to talk about called Love is Science. That one is a Taiwanese sub, and I'm going to research and see if there is a word for Chinese and for Japanese dramas, but for now I'll use Nuna for all of them. So like their romance is a Nuna romance, and like he is so funny and he's so dramatic, but she's like very professional, and she's like older, and she's like like for her she says she may be older, but she's very happy being single. Like we know this is probably going to change. Like I do see a romance happening between them, but I just love how it's developing, where she like kind of like reins him in because he is very over dramatic. Like when he found out that he was in love with, when he realized that, oh my god, am I in love with this woman, he legit freaked out. She's like, dude, calm down. Like her reactions to him are so funny. But going back to Wako and Maguro, I love their dynamic because they're like very respectful of each other, and like they even for the second episode, like she gets her period, and she doesn't know how to like talk about this with him because he's a man, but not only because that he's a man, because but that she's someone that she likes, that she really likes, and that she's in a relationship with, and she doesn't know how to discuss this with him. So like for the whole day, she's just saying she doesn't feel good, and he doesn't know what's wrong. Till eventually she was like, I have my period, I have cramps, and I don't feel good. So she goes home, and then he goes to like a pharmacy, and he buys like a whole set of menstrual items for her. He buys pads, he buys like a heat pad, he buys pills, he buys like even a stuffed toy to like comfort her. And I thought that was so sweet. And this is something I would wish I could see in Korean dramas, because we do not see this in Korean dramas. I wish things like periods were discussed more openly in Korean dramas, because it's important to destigmatize menstruation and periods, people. I want shows, whether it's North American, Asian, whatever, destigmatize the fact that periods are taboo and that there are things for women to be ashamed about. They are not. And I just like how we have him being like comforting her, and he's talking to her, and he's like, he slept over at just like, he slept, he didn't sleep in the same bed as her, but he like was there for her in case she needed anything. And I just love that that happens. I find, and I've seen this happen in a couple other J dramas where like women admit to the men that they have a period and the men are like, they're not bothered by it. So, and I wish even for North American shows like that doesn't happen. Like men would go into like a pharmacy to buy pads, they'd be like, oh my god, I act like it's something to be ashamed of. Dude, it's the same thing as buying a roll of toilet paper. Okay, get over it. But again, so but like they're so sweet, and I just love that he like we're like they're becoming more affectionate with each other, and they're like they kissed at the end of episode 4. They kissed, and it was just like and I just, this show is so sweet and it's so funny and so cute. And I would encourage everyone to watch this. So I'm watching this one. You can find it online, and I that's all I'll say. You can find, just Google colorful love J drama. You can find where you can watch it. But I just think it's important to talk about it, because it's important to have like shows that discuss things like against sexuality and gender identities, and also the relationship between Wako and Ashi, because they both work together. Like Ashi is Wako's supervisor, and like they work together, and they meet up with Meguro and Kira, because Meguro is like Kira's stylist. And so he's also the one person that really understands Kira, and he's able to like Ashi is to is sorry, it's not Ashi, it's Asahi to like rein him in. And there's these scenes where they go to like get their nails done, and Kira's manicure, she's so funny, where like she doesn't accept his behavior at all. Like he'll start to act, she's like, dude, you need to calm down, I'm doing your nails. And then like we get those scenes, and then like Meguro, like he's just sitting there and he's just like getting his nails done. And it's just so funny. And another thing with Kira is he's androgynous too, because like he wears dresses, and he wears like these really high and these really cool high heel black boots, and he wears like dresses and like corsets and that kind of stuff. And like the thing with it is that it's showing you like you can, like men can wear these things, and they can't, and they don't have to be perceived as feminine unless they want to be. Like I still see Kira as extremely masculine, and like he's tall, and like he has like broad shoulders, and to me he's like, I don't think anything about the dresses that they wear. And that's another thing with Western. I think Western, because like we know in Asian, there's like Pacifica and other um cultures and other ethnicities and races where men do wear what we would consider skirts. For goodness sakes, the Scottish wear kilts. And no one will dare cry on their masculinity. So like why would it be any different for men in Japan wearing dresses or skirts, you know? So that's, I think that's the beauty of the show as well. And I would encourage anyone to watch that. And then the next Japanese show I'm gonna talk about is Watashi no Oto Orari Tuko no Nemute Iru. Again, so the literal translation of this is, my husband is sleeping in the freezer. And this show is a mind trip, because I swear to God, I think the writers are actually messing with the audience more than they messing with the characters. Because what it is it's about this woman who is, she's, they say she's married, but it doesn't seem like she's married. So like she met this guy, and then they moved in to eat together, and it seems like she doesn't know very much about him. And so what happens? So the woman, Kisaragi Nana, played by Motoko Karia Yuika, um, where he starts to like, it seems like their relationship is abusive, because he like is his birthday, and I don't remember if it was his birthday that night or it was after. No, she made him dinner, and then he got angry for no reason, because abusers don't need a reason. And this is where she reached her breaking point, and she strangles him, and she thinks he's dead, and she takes him in the puts him in the freezer in the garage. So what happens next is the next day she wakes up and he is there in the kitchen, and like nothing happened, but he has a bruise on his neck that clearly looks like she strangled him, and she's like tripping out. She's like, what the hell is going on? I am pretty sure I killed this man. And then she goes into the garage and his body's in the freezer. And so then what happens later that day, she kills him again. And what happens is she goes to the freezer, takes his body out of the freezer and chops it up, or she thinks she does, and makes meat of him. So like I was discussing this with my friends. So we watched this show together, and I was like, this doesn't make sense because first thing first, it takes a lot of energy to chop up a human body, to dismember and whatever. And she doesn't have a saw. She doesn't have a machete. All she has is kitchen knives. Like even the sharpest kitchen knife is not enough to dismember a whole male body in like one night. And she doesn't have a meat grinder. What is she doing with all this flesh? What did she do with his bones? That it's not explained. So this is where I told my friends, I think she's imagining this. I don't think that he is really dead. I don't think, and I think she thinks that she's doing all the things, but she's not. Lo and behold, I believe I'm right because as more of the plot is revealed, it seems that either he has a twin brother who is messing with her, or I believe that she is being drugged by this guy because things are happening that doesn't explain, because like as I said, she it's so hard to explain. You need to watch it because like a lot of it is just like their visual cues. So I think the actress is doing a really good job with showing, I think, a character who is like not sure if she's going totally crazy or if she's sane and knows that it's just crazy shit happening around her. But that's kind of like what the plot is doing. I think like the writers are purposely messing with the viewers, the audience also, because we're beginning to doubt if she did these things, and we're beginning to doubt if these things actually happen. And I just love shows like that. I find J dramas are really good at this. Like even if you watch the cold case show, which is the Japanese version of the American show, even like the way how they unravel some of the plot, you're like, okay, so this happened in the past, or is it happening in the future? And I just love how they do that. And I think it's a really good psychological thriller. Interesting to see how it ends up, because I personally just think that she's just being messed with. And I think that we, the audience, are just being messed with. And if I'm totally wrong, that would be even better because I like when I can't predict when things go. Or I like when I'm totally surprised by the writing and where the plot turns out. But for now, I'm sticking with he is messing with her. And so this one is, again, I would recommend if you like thrillers, if you like psychological thrillers, this one is a really good one. And so so I'm still wrapping up. Again, I don't want to do these for too long, so I'm wrapping up. And so for the last two shows that I'm really going to get into are two Taiwanese shows. So the first one is Papa and Daddy. So this one is what I call a male love or ML drama. I don't like the term boy love. I think it's infantilized. I think it's infantilizing and a bit demeaning of the genre, which as people boy love. I don't like the term boy love. I just I it rubs me the wrong way, and especially when you're talking about shows that deal with grown men. These are not grown men, and just because they're gay in gay relationships, I don't think that you should be calling them boy love dramas. It's a bit, to me, creepy, pervy, even if you want to, and it's a way I think how the how fans of this particular genre of shows treats these characters. Like they treat, especially even if like even the actors who play them, they kind of like infantilize them, and like they get into this whole fandom idea where they kind of emasculate the characters, and they just see them as these cutesy representations of homosexuality, and I don't agree with that at all. And I prefer the term male love because it can cover for whether you watch the teen dramas or the grown ones, which is like Papa and Daddy, or Guardian, or um, Word of Honor, and like let me see, SCI Mystery, like those, even like those kind of shows. Or even if you talk more about the Taiwanese ones, there's like the history series where for like I think for the history series, I would say probably like 60% of them are like adult, are set in the adult world, where like 40% are set in like either high school or college um situations where they're teenagers, but they're men and they're male, or even if they're younger, they're male, and they're not boys. right? Why would you be calling, like, if you watch like Trapped, the one that's one of the better ones to me. Like Tangy and is a grown tail man. He's a mafia, he runs a gang. So why would you call them boy love? Anyway, I digress. So this one is Papa and Daddy, and the two main leads are Damien, played by Melvin Sia, and Jerry, played by Mike Lynn. And this one to me is, we've only seen 2 episodes so far, and this one I think is really good so far. And the plot with this one is you have Damien, who is a restaurateur. He's opening, he has his restaurant that he's running, and Jerry is a stay-at-home dad, and they have their 3-year-old son who is biologically Jerry's, because they got a surrogate. And it's about Jerry kind of like learning to, I think, I this is what I'm assuming it's going to be, is like learning to grow as a person, as I'm becoming more confident in his homosexuality. And the reason I say that is because in episode 2 we discover that Jerry's mother has no idea that her son is gay, has no idea that her son is married, has no idea that her son is living with a man who is his husband, and has no idea that her son has a son. So this one is gonna be, you're gonna have this couple who is like living as a couple, and then all of a sudden this woman turns up out of nowhere. This is my mom. Like, nah, you gotta call me before. I love you, mom, but you need to let me know you're coming. But she turns up, and like Jerry tells him, tells her, oh, this is Damien's son. And so their excuse for this is that the reason that their son Kai calls him Papa is because he spends his days looking after Kai. Like, what mother bites that? Why wouldn't he call you uncle? Why wouldn't he be calling you Uncle Jeremy? Why would he be calling you Papa? Like, that makes no sense. And then the other thing is, to me, Damien is slightly a bit domineering. We're in the fact that we learned that Jerry gave up his career as a YouTuber. He had a very successful career as a YouTuber to become a stay-at-home dad. And it seemed to me when they met, they were younger. So like he's younger than Damien. So I think he was probably around 23, 24 when he met Damien. I know they have a 3-year-old son, so I'm guessing they should have at least been together at least 3 years, because it would take time to find a surrogate, and then once they find a surrogate, she would be pregnant for 9 months. So let's say 3 months to find a surrogate, 9 month pregnancy. That's a year. So then that's, and then 3 years. Kai is 3 years old, so that's 4 years. And I would hate to think that they were together for less than 2 years before they began this. So I'm gonna say they were together at least 6 years. So he's almost 30. And this is 6 years of his life that his mother has no idea. And like, he's been gay his entire life and she doesn't know this. But this is 6 years of him being in a monogamous relationship, raising a whole child, and she don't know. And then now Damien, he has this thing where he doesn't see Jerry's career as a YouTuber as that important. Mind you, they met because Jerry was interviewing him for the restaurant that he was opening. And like, he gave this up. So then Jerry's like, I want Kai to go back to school. I want not go back. He's not going into kindergarten. And then at first Damien was like, but he doesn't need to go into kindergarten. He's too young. He's too small. I'm like, sir, how old do you think children are when they go into kindergarten? He's the right age to go into kindergarten. So then he agrees. But then now Jerry's like doing his YouTube channel where he live streams and he's like preparing food. And then on the first day, what does he do? He's supposed to take Kai out to the park to play, to give Jerry time to do his live stream. He comes back less than 10 minutes later thinking, oh, I thought you would have been done by now. I'm like, really? You're gonna go and use this time to bond with your child. And then at the end of the night, Kai is feeling neglected because Damien is like, oh, he didn't have time for this. And I'm like, you could use the time that Jerry is filming to bond with your child. Say, this is Papa's time to do Papa's work, and this will be our time. This will be special Daddy and Kai time. Nope, they don't do that. They make it seem like Jerry's being an unreasonable one because he wants to spend just an hour for himself doing what he loves. And it's like, because while Kai is at school, he's like cooking dinner, he's like cleaning, he's a house help. It's like, because someone lives at home doesn't mean that they have all the time in the world. He's cleaning up behind Kai, he's cleaning up behind Damien, he's preparing dinner, he's going shopping, he's doing all of these things, and he's just asking for 1 hour out of the day to do this one thing for himself, and even that Damien couldn't do. And now with his mother turning up, he's like, I don't know how this is gonna play out, because when on for his YouTube channel, like it's clearly obvious that he was gay. So I don't know if she's probably never seen his original YouTube channel. So this is going to be another thing that that he's gonna have to deal with. As you can tell, I'm clearly in Jerry's corner. So I just hope that we see Damien become, I think, a more supportive partner, and that that Jerry's gonna have to come out to his mom, that he is more supportive of that, and that he really does have the support system that he needs. And another thing is that Jerry's sister clearly knows, and she's been keeping this from his mother. So that's something I think you're gonna have to deal with, because you have a daughter keeping this huge, massive secret from her mother, and there's gonna have to be some kind of follow up from that. But this is another show I would very much recommend to anyone who enjoys the ML drama genre, or just a really good. I think, to me so far, I'm really liking it, and it's a Taiwanese show, so the budget is slightly different to what you might um, know from like most of the other dramas. I think it's probably independent, and though I think, I don't want to say that the budget is low. I think when it comes to a lot, especially particular Taiwanese dramas, you can kind of tell the difference in production quality. It's not low. It's not low budget at all, but you can kind of tell which dramas are made by like the bigger studios versus which are made by the smaller studios. And I think Papa and Daddy was made by a smaller studio. And then the next one that I'm watching, that I'm going to talk about, is Love is Science. This is a drama that I've been really enjoying. So it's a weekly one. So this is one where it's not like some of the ones where we're like 2 episodes a week. This one is just 1 episode a week, and I usually watch it on Friday nights. I'm really enjoying this one. So it stars Christina Mock as Yan Fei, and Wu Nian Xian as Wang Xianyu. And so like his the shark will be Yan Xian. And I'm really liking the show. So it's again a kind of a Nuna. It's a Nuna drama. And I spoke about this a little bit in the first recap episode. And I'm gonna get a little bit into this one, because I think this one is really talking about how women of a certain age are perceived, and when they, especially if they're professional women, and like how society stigmatizes women who are either divorced or who are single and older. So like with Yan Fei, she is running her own company, which is called Love is Science, which is a matchmaking company. And her big thing is that she is divorced, but she's walking around wearing her wedding ring to let people, to make people think that she's still married. And this gets challenged for the first time in the show by Xian Yu's. We discover he has a girlfriend. Yeah, so that happens, but she challenges. She's the first one that starts to realize something's not quite right, because we have this woman who's married and her husband lives in America, and they've been separate. They're not separated. She doesn't say they're separated. She just says my husband lives there. She's like, okay, so your husband has been living in the States for how long, and you've been living here in Taiwan by yourself for how long, and you guys are still married, and this is not a separation? Because that's something I would be questioning too. I'm like, does no one think this is weird? She doesn't call her husband. She doesn't text or call her co-workers who know her really well, who spend a lot of time with her. They never say anything about her husband. They don't think it's weird that this woman never receives a call from her husband. But the girlfriend, she doesn't ask. But then she starts to get a bit invasive, because then she talks about, oh, are you guys planning to get children? Like, what? I'm like, that's none of your business. The other stuff I don't want you asking, because I want to know her explanation too. But you don't need to know about when they want to have children, or if they want to have children. And I kind of like that Xian Yu's sister-in-law. She says that she's like, not everyone that gets married wants to have kids. Like, that's none of your business either. And I just love that she does that. And then there is this client of theirs of Love is Science, who is an older woman. I think she's older than Yan Fei, and she wants to get married within 3 months, because she wants to prove to her ex that she could get married, that she's desirable to another man, because this man cheated on her, left her, and he's getting married, and he had the audacity to invite her to his wedding. And instead of turning on the invitation, she's like, nah, I have 3 months to find a man and I have 3 months to get married. And so then what happens is she meets this man who's a farmer, and I just love him. He's so soft hearted. He's very sweet. He's very considerate, and he thinks that he's not good enough for her. And he tells her to don't waste her time on him. And at first she's offended, because she thinks like, where you don't like, she's like, why don't you want to give us a chance, whatever. But then I like that it shows her at night wondering and thinking, and she's like, okay, the problem isn't me. It's literally him. He thinks that he's not good enough for me. And she confronts him about that. She's like, you can't decide for me who I think is good enough. You can't tell me if I think you're good enough. You can't tell me if I want to, like, if I have the right to date you or not. And I love that she confronts him, and that he listens to her. and he even though he may be still feeling insecure, he's like, I'm gonna trust that you know what you want. I'm gonna trust that you look and see me. This he thinks he's a poor farmer, but clearly he got money because he got a lot of land. But he like lives with his mom and he lives in the country. He's like, you're from the city and from the country. And she's like, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that is our relationship. And she's like, I travel internationally for work. Why would I not travel to another province to see the person I'm dating? She's like, that's no hardship for me. And he accepts that. And I hope that we get a bit more, that we get that as the show progresses, that we get to learn more about these two characters, because I just love them. And he's so sweet and she's so sweet to get with him. And they're learning to become, and she has her own insecurities because she's older and she thinks that she's very sure of herself, but then she knows that men in her profession, they don't want necessarily, they love her as a business person and like as a trader, but like as a woman, like they don't see her femininity. But like they're learning to become more secure about each other, but they're not depending on each other for that. So I love that. And I'm hoping that, like, I don't know how they're gonna do the whole Xian Yu and Yan Fei, because like, he has a girlfriend now, but I think what's gonna happen is she's gonna realize that Xian Yu has always loved Yan Fei because she was his first love, and like there's this letter he wrote to her that was so sweet. I know it seems like Yan Fei is gonna find out he's had a crush on her when they were younger, so we are looking to see how that plays. And then also there's gonna be a relationship between two men. One is Mark Lee, played by Anderson Chung. He is Yan Xiu's best friend, and then there's Dai Wu Wan, played by Lin Yu, who works for Yan Fei, and he so. One is gay, and he's openly gay. He's a homosexual man, and he's like proud of that. And I think he's gonna challenge Mark Lee because Mark Lee seems to be one of those men that like when it, I don't want to like cry down the character till we get a bit more insight into him, but I don't know if it's necessary he has a problem with gay men or if he just has a problem with Uwan. We don't know if the problem he has with Uwan is because he's gay, or if he's just like we just our auras don't match or that kind of situation. So I'm gonna hold up. I'm gonna reserve judgment on him in particular to see what happens. But I just love how Uwan challenges him and he gets up into his space, and they have really good chemistry too. Like the two actors have like really good chemistry. So the characters have this kind of like this like antagonistic but like simmering chemistry. So like, I want to see how that plays out. And so that's it for the shows that I've been watching. I'm gonna end my recap here because I don't want to do these too long. I hope I have not gone over half an hour. I hope not. So for the other shows that I've been watching, these are just the casual shows. I watched Hello Mr. Goo. I watched that last weekend. That one is on WeTV as well. I've been watching Love Scenery. That one is ongoing. Mr. Goo wrapped up last week. So when I watched it last week, I think was when the final episode had aired. It's 30 episodes. Love Scenery is also 30 episodes. This one is also a Luna romance air. She is about, I think, about 6 or 7 years older than him. He's a college he's a university student. So I think the character is 22 and I think she's about 27 or 28, somewhere around there. She's a musician and he is a engineering, yeah, I think he's an engineering student and she's a musician, and they're really cute together. And also like he's very mature, and like he's like, I love that this character is very sure of himself, and like she's learned to be more playful. That one I've seen up to 20, episode 25. And so those two, Love Senior and Mr. Goo, you can watch on WeTV. There's some of them are like you have to pay VIP subscription, which I did because I really like these ones. And those are, I'm trying to remember if they're Taiwanese or Chinese. They're Chinese. Because and I'm gonna have to look into that some more, but the dialects are different. So like I can kind of tell a Taiwanese, like a Taipei accent to like a mainland China accent. So I'm gonna say Mr. Gu and Love Scenery are Chinese. And that's it. That's my casual watching. And the next time next time I do a next episode, I am finally going to discuss Word of Honor. I've been waiting till all the episodes have been fully subbed without me having to pay for another subscription. I have way too many subscription accounts. So I've been waiting for all of the episodes to be subbed, and by next week I'll be able to watch it. And then you can also look out for, I'm gonna have another episode of Beyond the Romance guest discussion coming up, and that one is going to be for the Uncanny Conjure, which is a Korean drama. It's on Netflix. And I'm gonna have another one coming up later in May with my friend Ray. So you can look forward to those two as well. But you can watch this episode. You can find other episodes of Beyond the Romance video format here on YouTube, as well as the podcast channel on butwhythopodcast.com. And you can follow me on my live tweets for Vincenzo Law School. And there's some new dramas starting. I think I'm gonna start live tweeting Taxi. That one could be fun on Viki. But we'll see. But there's some more dramas starting for me. So you can follow Dramas with Carrie. So that's hashtag Dramas with Carrie for my live tweets. And you can look for Saturday Night Sci-Fi, where I co-host Saturday Night Sci-Fi live tweets at 10 p.m. Eastern every Saturday night. You can find that information in the description box. And if you're enjoying this, please like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for shows you think I should watch and talk about, you can put them in the replies, and you can find links to my published work in the description box. Links to the AFCA YouTube channel, which as a member of the African American Film Critics Association, I take part in virtual roundtables, and you can find links to discussions with Raoul Peck for his documentary Exterminate All the Brutes, with Tiana Paris for sorry, not Falcon and the Winter Soldier for WandaVision. And recently we did Gangs of London, we did Delilah, we did for the cast of Godfather of Harlem, and a whole bunch of other ones. By the time this comes out, there's going to be one with Michael B. Jordan. I wasn't part of that roundtable, but you can still go on the YouTube channel and see all the other ones I have taken part in, as well as others I have not taken part in. And you can go and look forward to those, and I'll be linking more, so you can find those in the playlist for AFCA and for interviews that I do for Carolyn Talks. And that's it. I am done talking. Everyone, I hope you enjoy this. Please let me know what shows you are watching, what shows you enjoy. You can find me on Twitter as usual, on Instagram at CarrieCNH12. That's CarrieCNH12. You can find me there. And that's it for today. And I have fun, stay safe, and till next time. Bye.